This is Richard Melchizedek from the Awaken New Earth podcast, and we have a special guest on today, Daniel Scranton, who is a verbal channel, a spiritual teacher, and a sound healer. And you can find his channelings all over the internet and on his website, www.danielscranton.com, as well as his YouTube channel. I think, first of all, welcome, Daniel. It's an honor to have you on the Awaken New Earth podcast. This is all about higher conscious conversation and the New Earth energies, frequencies, and bringing that, to all of us that are awakened and on that path and existing within these higher dimensional realities at this time. So why don't you go ahead and just tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Well, about 10 years ago, I started to channel, and it's changed everything in my life. It's been a passion of mine. I mean, it was a passion of mine before I started doing it. So I was interested in all channeled material and looking into it and discovering what I could about myself and reality. And so when it started happening to me, I was there with open arms to embrace it. And I had a similar experience to what I know other people have, which is the initial feelings of like, is this real? Am I making it up? Why am I conscious during it? I don't want to be conscious. And so luckily I stuck with it, because I easily could have said, no, this is just too hard and it's too big of a responsibility and I don't want it. But I kept doing it, and now here I am all these years later and loving it, loving that it's my work and the way it impacts people's lives, and, getting to live and be at home with my wife and daughter, in between clients, in between sessions, just getting to go hang out with them for a little bit. And, if I have a cancellation, just go spend time with them in the hammock. So it's a pretty good life, once you get through the hard part of becoming a channel initially. And then I've discovered also a joy for teaching. So I love teaching classes, courses, working with people one-on-one as well, seeing them develop as a channel, as I have with you. And it's just so much fun. It's like my favorite thing to do is to have one of those sessions where somebody else is doing the channeling, and I'm just like, oh, that's pretty cool. Being curious about what they're getting and who they're bringing through.
So I noticed, a lot of your work that's all over, I see every day, is about the Arcturian 9D Council. What is your role within this New Earth system, alignment, energetic, universal system that's coming into place now? Because I know they've had quite a high level of support, and I know you channel all different kinds of beings, from the creators to the archangels, but there's a lot of information that comes from the Arcturian 9D Council from yourself. So how do you feel the role is within this ascension cycle?
Well, first, let me say that I want to clear something up to people who hear the word Arcturians and assume that there's just one group. There's not just one group of Arcturians. There's several dimensions that exist within the Arcturian star system. And then the Arcturians that I channel are non-physical. So they're not still living in the Arcturian system, in the sense that they don't have physical bodies. They're not on a planet. They're not on a ship. And so when you're connecting with a different group of Arcturians than the one that I'm connecting with, then you might be getting like visuals of what they look like, names, and so on. But when you're channeling non-physical beings, they don't have names. They don't need them. Just like they don't need a driver's license or a social security number. So you have to think about how consciousness would exist in a non-physical plane. And it's hard, I think, for people to do that. So my understanding of the Arcturians throughout history of the galaxy is that they've always been sort of more focused on themselves and just being a place where beings could incarnate and work on themselves and be in the more spiritual uh, mindset of I'm going to do this meditation work, I'm going to work on my astral projections, I'm going to work on levitation, I'm going to create healing devices and um, make things easier for future generations who will want to develop spiritually, and have been less interested in like what's going on in the Pleiades or what's going on in Orion. But then if you're a being like I think we all have been, who's traveled through the different star systems and different dimensions, you could have a series of like 200 incarnations in the Orion system and then say, I've had enough of this. I'm going to take a break and go to Arcturus for some incarnations. And so
And when
Arcturus has been like a spiritual retreat center.
when you say incarnations in Arcturus, are you speaking physical or non-physical?
Physical, yeah. Uh, and so these Arcturians that I'm bringing through, they've ascended within their own star system to the ninth dimension. So they were physical, now they're non-physical, and they've recently taken a more active role in wanting to participate in what's going on here, how they can help, examining, observing. They'll always, they usually start off a transmission with something like, we have been observing, or we've gotten excited about this, and we're finding this out about all of you. And really they're just, if you think about like uh, a person, to make this into an analogy that might help people understand. You're a person, you walk into a therapist's office, that therapist doesn't know you, doesn't know everything about you just as soon as you walk in. So they are wanting to get to know you, what your history is, what your current uh, vibration is, and how you're feeling about this and that. And that's basically what the Arcturians have been doing. And they've been coming through me for about 3.5 years. And in that time, now they've gotten much more specific about their offerings and talking about like what's going on right now and how they're helping right now, or who they're teaming up with to help, what the energies are that are going on our planet. And I've just found that their perspective has been so helpful to me and to other people that I just, instead of going and saying, well, I can channel Archangel Michael or Pleiadian High Council of Seven, so maybe I should start bringing them through again for daily messages. I just feel like doing this consistently with the Arcturians has really built up a lot of goodwill, and just because they're so focusing on what's going on right now all the time, I really like bringing them through for people.
What would you say your role is within New Earth at this moment in time?
Well, certainly just to be myself and anchor in whatever energies I am summoning and bringing through myself uh, for where I'm living right now, to be one of the grid workers, one of the light workers here on Maui that is helping to raise the consciousness of everyone. I think eventually my role will shift into from being the channeler to being the contact specialist, the one who is able to really connect with some ET beings that are in the flesh, because right now most of the channeling I do is of non-physical beings, but certainly that's preparing me for more contact with physical ETs that I can be the go-between for humanity with.
Hmm. That's a huge conversation topic right there alone. Something that you've been guided is coming for you.
Yeah, I think we're gonna see. Well, we've already seen. I don't know if you saw this, but the U.S. Navy or Air Force, I think it may have been the Air Force, has said, yeah, we have a video of these ships. We don't know what they are. We have classified them as UFOs. And this happened years and years ago, and it wasn't the occurrence of these UFOs wasn't news to those who are like really into UFOs and ETs. But the fact that the US government now has said there's been ships in the sky that we don't know what they are, who they are, is a step forward, I think, towards that, um, towards our realizing we're not alone, and maybe more people being curious about what that means and who we're going to be connecting with as we move forward here.
So when you started channeling or getting involved within this aspect of your work or that discovery point, did you intend on working with, within like the galactic realms, the galactic frequencies, or did you more intend to be working with some of the ascended masters and that as you have
Mm,
done? Is this something that's always been a passion, like, UFOs or galactic lineage?
no. No, I mean, I feel like I've been late to the party in my life in so many ways. I mean, I just had a daughter. I'm 47, and I had a daughter at 46. So I'm like late to the party in so many ways. And I was 38. I was 37 when I had my big experience with ETs for the first time. That, I mean, I loved the movie E.T. I loved Close Encounters of the Third Kind, but I didn't think much of it after, watching those films. And I saw those films when I was very young. Probably saw them both in the theater. Um, and as a 37-year-old, I was not interested in ETs at all. And then I had the experience of them coming to me in the middle of the night and giving me this giant upgrade, which was energy moving through my body over and over, uh, like multiple orgasms. It was like just boom, 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 and I was like floating. I was so high from the experience, and I was talking to them, and they were answering my questions with a yes by giving me a huge surge of energy, or if it was no, I would feel nothing. And then I said my eyes closed the whole time. I finally opened my eyes, and then it was like the whole thing started all over again with the flooding of energies, but I didn't see them in that moment. But that's when I got interested in ETs. That's when I started to look into Bashar and his work and others, Nora Harold, Wendy Kennedy, Lisa Royal Holt, all who channel Pleiadians, and just got more interested in the whole realm of ETs and UFOs. And I have found it to be kind of a sticky, not always pleasant community. The UFO, I mean, some people call it ufology, or but I think that part of the reason why that realm of the spiritual community is a bit more uh, you know low vibe in a lot of ways, and people like butting heads and calling this one a fraud, and you're either with Stephen Greer or you're with Corey Good, or that sort of like we've got to take sides, and people get really fixated on negative ETs, and the conspiracy theories and the governments and all that stuff, the cabal. It The reason is because I think a lot of people who get into ETs, they just stay up here with it, and it's really just about, like, I mean, if you think about um, more masculine energy, more of like the male of our species is typically more brain mind oriented and not really engaging here where you need to in the heart and in the feeling sense. So then it becomes more about like, well, beliefs, like I believe this, and this I'm going down this conspiracy theory rabbit hole instead of like, I mean, I don't want to be critical of anyone in particular. So I'll just say that there's a guy out there who seems to have a ton of knowledge and he's always talking to insiders. But when you see him talk about himself, it's like, you know, he's prominent in this community. He never talks about his own experiences. Like he's not having his own experiences. And I think that that's what a lot of people are missing out on, where you can get a lot of information and you can read a lot of articles on the internet and watch a lot of videos and have all this knowledge. But at the end of the day, you've got to give yourself a personal experience for something to be real. When it's not, when you're not grounding it in some sort of feeling, and it's not some sort of spiritual experience, then it's just knowledge, and knowledge is, you know, relative. It's perspective. It's not real unless you're really experiencing it. So I think that's a major issue that is present in this community of the UFO ET enthusiast. And I, for one, want to encourage people to meditate. Just meditate. Just put your computer away and clear your mind. If you can't clear your mind long enough to have your own experience with these beings, then it's never going to be a pleasant experience for you. It's always going to be you on a message board butting heads with someone else who believes something about draconians that you don't, you know. So I feel very sad about that when I see it in our community, and I see how much of negativity leaks into something that should be about people coming together. It should be about people wanting to make contact and have their own personal experiences and not be so opinion based. Like that's not spirituality. That's just you know, science or technology, which has its place in all of this, but it's not the same as giving yourself an experience, going out into the world and connecting with people and connecting with Earth and sitting under the stars and giving yourself an experience, because that's what people need more of. That's what's going to help to transform people.
I think that's a beautiful segue into the whole New Earth conversation, the fifth dimensional frequencies and higher. As a lot of these experiences that you're describing were kind of operate within that like third dimensional realm, where it's more of the older energy, where things needed or things are very like steered or guided, pushed or pulled. When we get into the higher frequencies, what tends to be more of a showing up, becoming present, and that like allowance to open up to that unfoldment that takes place for to have these experiences and to have these connections without attachment on what's right and wrong, as opposed to more of a divine like moment that is kind of being birthed within that exact second without any necessary like direction or angle to it, which is that like openness and allowance of it.
Mm.
Yo, that is one of the biggest things that's, for yourself in the field that you operate in, you're operating more within this higher like unfoldment that's not ego based. When you speak about operating within, the heart center and more of that like open, divine like kind of communication that comes through. So as we are going through this ascension cycle and within this, new earth alignment that's coming through, what is it that you do to operate within these like higher frequencies and stay in that space for, yourself, your family, and it's a message for our viewers?
Well, lucky for me, I've just always been sort of, circumstances have always brought me into something that I needed. I needed to read Conversations with God. I needed to find the Seth books. I needed to find the raw food diet. I needed to be drawn into nature and being in nature. And it was like something would always nudge me towards these things that I needed, including just my awakening experience. So my awakening experience was just that, I'm going through life. I'm just trying to get by like everybody and get a job. And the guy that hires me says, I want everybody on my team to listen to Personal Power 2 by Tony Robbins. So I listened to it and it's like, yeah, this is okay. There was nothing like earth shattering for me in it until I got to the very last CD, which is when he interviews Deepak Chopra. And Deepak Chopra is talking about something that was very near and dear to me, which was natural living and, holistic approach to health and all that stuff that I was really into at the time because of my raw foodism. And so I really just went down the Deepak rabbit hole and got up my hands on everything that I could at my local library and, borrowed books from people and listened to books on tape. And that became my education, and that because I was atheist at the time. So I became aware that there's so much more in this universe. And it's like everything that I've ever needed like that has just kind of been presented to me, fell into my lap. I've stumbled upon it, and it's been fantastic to see how supported the journey is when you're just open to whatever's coming. Whatever somebody recommends to you, just try it. I mean, 3 people told me to read Conversations with God, and on the 3rd time I said, okay, I'll read it. And then I read those books like they were like drugs to me. I was so happy to see the information that was being presented to me in that way for the very first time. Because I grew up Catholic, and God was way up there, and the big judge in the sky that was determining whether I was good enough to be in heaven. So it was a way different experience to read those books, and everything has just led to everything else. And even that time that I experienced all that energy flowing through me, I was in a pit of despair when that happened. Like I was in a low point in my life where everything was really not going well for me. And just, I guess my willingness to just feel my feelings, because I had a good cry the day before it happened, and just really let myself feel it all. And then the next night it all came flowing into me. So I think that a really easy way to be spiritual and to have awakening experiences is to just be open and embrace everything that comes your way, everything that is there for you to feel, and everything that you're supposed to experience, you will. And if we take the weight off of our shoulders that we carry around that says, I'm supposed to be doing this, I should be doing that, and I'm not, and look at that person over there and what they're doing and what they're experiencing, and I'm not, so there must be something wrong. And I think we all tend to do that instead of just saying, well, what's here right now in front of me, or what's showing up, because that's what's important. The universe is always going to provide it.
So what have you learned about our like universal system since connecting with the Arcturian 90 Council and some of the other Palladian councils? And just, I know you work with all different kinds of collectives in that. So piece by piece, there must be gaining a little more clarity and insight on what like the grander picture that's going on. Has that being more revealed to you?
I think that we have this saying, as above, so below. I don't know if that's from the Bible, but it's also like as below, so above. So one of the things I've noticed in, like, when I was using my therapist analogy, is that there's, in the physical and on earth, we have all of these analogies going on for what is really an energetic experience. So it's happening in the non-physical as well. Even beings in the 12th dimension have different perspectives on how to help humanity. So when we come together and we say, oh, there was a mass shooting again, and we come together and we say, well, we have this perspective over here, which is less guns would be good. And then we have this perspective over here, which is that we can't restrict limits on guns, because then we won't have any power. And it's like, instead of the way that we've been going about it, which is to say, well, one side has to be right, the other side has to be wrong. I think when you get up into the higher dimensions, the beings are much more like, oh, really, you see it that way, interesting. Like, how can we learn from each other? If you think about the gun control issue that I just brought up, if both sides were to realize that basically um, they're coming from a perspective of, I have a fear, okay, and my fear, on one side, is someone I love is going to get shot and killed because there's so many guns. And the other side is, well, I have a fear that someone's going to come into my house and I won't have a gun to protect myself. So either I'll be shot and killed, or someone I love will be. And so basically they're coming from the same place. It's the same fear, it's just different approach to dealing with the fear. And if both sides were able to sit down and say, let's talk about our fears, let's process our fears, let's see what lies underneath all of it, and see if we can come at it from more of a feelings-based perspective than the law and arguments about this or that, statistics, all the things that people like to throw around. Then we could be operating like they're operating in these higher dimensions, where they're saying, hey, let's come together. You're Pleiadian, we're Arcturian. We both want to see more love, more healing, more unity throughout the galaxy. Let's see what we can do together, even though we're different, even though we have different perspectives. And I think a lot of extraterrestrials, that we've heard about, that we've seen depictions of, both from first-person accounts and what the science fiction writers are downloading about what ETs look like. They look very different from each other. So like that scene, the first Star Wars movie where they go into the tavern and all the E.t.s are in there and they look so different from each other, you know, and yet they're all drinking at the same bar. It's kind of like that's what we have here on Earth too. I mean, we have different races within our human race, or they're not really different races, but we've sort of sectioned each other off of like, you know, African and Caucasian and Asian, and because we look different, but we're not really that different. We just have different hair, skin, eye color, height, weight, you know, customs and things like that. And if we could all just kind of see how it doesn't matter that we look different, we are still one race. And I think that's what part of this connecting to the other beings and the other star systems is also meant to do. It's meant to help us realize, hey, we're more similar here than we thought. And we one thing we all have in common is we were born here on Earth, and we can see ourselves as one earthly race. And I think that when we do that, and when we are able to say, it doesn't matter that I was born in this country and you were born in that country, that means nothing really, then we can start to come together and play more and co-create more like the ETs in other dimensions have figured out how to do. And that will ultimately bring humanity to a galactic table where we can sit down and say, hey, we want to be a part of this galactic community and contribute and work with all of you to create a better galaxy for everyone.
What would the role of the 144,000 play in this? What's your take on that or opinion?
I think that what that's saying is it doesn't, because we got 7.7 billion, so it's a very small number
Mhm.
by comparison. So I think what that's saying is that within the population of Earth, if 144,000 people were just focusing on being the light and receiving high frequency energy and looking to be of service and opening themselves up to whatever is available for the rest of humanity to benefit from, then we could take all of that and create a grid. And I think this is something we're doing across the entire planet that would support everyone, whether they're awake or asleep, and especially those who are still asleep, because they need to get some sort of help from unexpected places, you know, from just being able to live their lives and not necessarily be tuned into what you and I are tuning into, and still receive the energies grounded in by the 144,000, because we're spread out all across the planet, those of us who are awake and doing this work, and creating these grid lines. I think there's, you know, there's the ley lines that are natural to the planet, and I think we've also been creating our own grids for quite some time now, as we have this desire to be connected to others who hold a similar intent for humanity, which is that we raise the level of our consciousness. And so one of the things I do when I first get up in the morning is I go outside and I stand barefoot on the grass, and I open my arms up in like a giant V, and I tell the universe I'm ready to receive whatever I can for humanity, to be a conduit and to ground that energy through my body. And I imagine roots spiraling down into the earth, as well, to be grounded and to ground that energy in, so that, and obviously I'm in a position as well where I'm working with people and I want to help the people that I'm working with on a daily basis. But then there's also the people that I'm not reaching, because I'm only reaching thousands out of billions of people. So I want to uh, obviously help all of humanity. And I think that's a way to do that as someone who feels like I'm being called to step up and be one of the ones who leads. And I think there's going to be more and more, and way more than 144,000. But I feel like we've reached that uh, critical mass already, and now it's just about the 144,000 and more people putting themselves in that position of really opening up to receive what we can for the human race.
So coming out of this coronavirus, the COVID-19, so many different perspectives on this. What is the highest perspective that you can share with us on what this is doing for us on a planetary level?
First of all, people, I think, need to let go of the idea that there's a dark agenda. One of the things that I think has been lost in a lot of spiritual teachings that are out there now is the truth that was brought through by Jane Roberts, who was channeling Seth uh, over 50 years ago, when Seth said through her, "You create your reality." So I believe that that is a spiritual truth that is incontrovertible at this point. Now, it's true that a person can walk down the street and be murdered by another person just because they left their house, and you could say, well, how did that person create that reality? They obviously didn't want to have that experience. Well, they created it vibrationally. It was by agreement that they would be there and that the other person would be there, and they probably got together the night before in the astral plane and set the whole thing up. Higher selves were involved. It was all part of the soul's journey. So if you're looking at it from a completely egoic perspective, you would say, no, that person didn't create the reality. They would never ask for that experience. And I think we have a lot of that going on right now on the planet when it comes to COVID-19, is a lot of people are looking at it from an egoic perspective of, we are being hoodwinked here. This is being done to us. This is a group that wants more control. That's quietly behind the scenes manipulating all of it, and people are going down that path without ever asking themselves, why did I create this?
Hmm.
And I think that if you're living something, then it serves you. It's not just abuse. It's another thing that when I in the spiritual community, I just cannot understand how I mean, there's a lot of things I can't understand how people believe, but I cannot believe how a person can say that Earth is a trap, that we're trapped here. And I to a certain extent I can, because I understand the story behind that, and that it's a story that seems like it's not a far leap from what we do know about you know, the groups that are working, behind the scenes, and they do have a dark agenda. But if you're looking at Earth as a trap that you're stuck in, because when you died, you went to the light, and you weren't supposed to go to the lab. I mean, I've heard the most, to me, absurd stories out there. That person certainly does not believe that they create their reality, if they believe that. Because even if that's true, let's get on board with that theory for a second and say that we are trapped here, that the light when you die going towards it is the trap. Then you still are creating that experience for yourself, and there's a reason why you're creating that experience. It's not just that you're a victim. So the victim perpetrator mentality is something we're supposed to be evolving and expanding out of. But right now, if you look around the internet, you're going to see 95 theories about how we're being victimized, and maybe 5 about how this is something that we co-created because we needed to, because we're supposed to be having experiences that help us to evolve our consciousness and ascend. So when I channel the Arcturian Council, they talk, the very first thing that they said about why it happened or how it got started was, that's in the past now. So it's here. It's 6 months now in the past. I think it was November, could have been September. I don't know when it started in China, but you know, there's multiple pasts. There's not one past.
Mm.
So how are you going to sort out which past is the one true past when there's more than one of them? Now that might be a new concept to some people, but I think a lot of people also are operating under the assumption that there's one future.
So
So if there's one past and one future, then what do we get to contribute? You know, like, how do we create our reality if we are destined to only experience one future from this? And I don't see it that way. I see multiple timelines. I think that the Arcturians are always talking about that as well, how an experience like this will create more timelines, how we are co-creating new timelines with them. All kinds of things are happening that are very positive from it. And I, for one, am not interested in going back into the past and dissecting how it got started when there's an opportunity right in front of me to feel love, compassion, forgiveness, all the things that are going to move us forward onto the timeline that I want to be on. And I want more people to come along for that ride with me on.
what do you see our highest timeline as for humanity right now?
Well, I don't know that I can see the highest timeline, but I did channel the Arcturians the other night, and they said there's a couple things that could happen. You know, there could be enough people receiving the um, energy coming in from the Pleiadians right now to completely wipe the virus out. We could raise our vibration as a collective enough so that the virus no longer affects us. Something I was getting today about the sun offering an energetic transmission to Earth that would ultimately wipe the virus out. So there's all. Oh, the other one that the Arcturians mentioned was a person with enough prominence in the world, on the world stage. You know, I think of people like Elon Musk, you know, people who are out there who really want to do good and who have the platform, even though they're, Elon Musk holds no political position, he can still do a lot. So someone like that, coming out and saying, uh, actually there's this natural substance that you can just drink and it will wipe it out, and you sort of see that in certain stories out there. But then there are people who will always say, no, that's not real, that won't work, that's not true. I mean, even the guy, the medical medium guy, who Anthony William, I think his name is, who's this huge proponent of celery juice, and how celery juice, if you did it consistently for 28 days, and I'm not exactly sure what his regimen is with that, like if you drink as much as you want, or you drink like 20 ounces a day or whatever. But then I get on my Google on my phone, I'll sometimes just open the Google app and see like what the recommended articles are for me based on my searches. And there's like people saying, the celery juice diet is crap. It doesn't do anything. So there's always going to be the alternate perspective out there, and especially when it's something like that's like too simple, right? It's too simple. Meditation it's just too simple. Like there has to be something more complex than just like go sit in a room by yourself, close the door, shut off the lights, close your eyes and meditate. Like, no, it can't be that easy. But I think everything in my life that has ever happened that's good has happened because I said, I feel like crap, I'm going to go meditate.
Yeah. I know you have just released a new book as well, Ascension, Shifting to the Fifth Dimension. Do you want to just explain that book to our viewers? Was that channeled material? Is that how did it all come about? And this is the second one in a series, if I'm correct.
It's the second one. So, like I said earlier, I've been channeling the Arcturian Council for 3.5 years, every day, pretty much. I've occasionally traveled or something and taken time off. But if I'm at home and, I will pretty much every day channel a new message from them. So that's over 1,000 messages. And somebody approached me several years ago after I had moved here to Maui and said, why aren't you putting all of your messages into a book form? And I said, I don't want to do it. Like, it's too much work. Especially because I channel it first verbally, and then I sit down and I transcribe it. And I'll transcribe it. I used to listen back and listen to make sure I transcribed it right as I read it on the page. But even when I was doing that, I was still missing a word here, getting a word wrong here. Like the other day, someone pointed out, you wrote stores here, and I think you meant stories.
Mhm.
So I didn't want to publish a book that had all those kinds of typos in it. So my friend said, I'll do it for you. I'll go through each one. I'll make sure you got it right. And she even cross-checks it with the audio on YouTube of the channeling. So she'll edit everything that needs to be edited, send it back to me, and then I'll publish it on Amazon self-published. I never even tried to get it published by a major whatever, because I think I'm a bit of a control freak. In addition to just being like, you know what, I think it's just the easy way. The easy way is just like get it on Create Space. So what we did with these messages from the Arcturian Council is we broke them down into 7 categories, which we just made into chapters. And there's no the time, it's not like they're in sequential order. It's like we chose the ones that would be timeless, that you could flip the book open to, and any day you're reading it, it's going to be valuable information for you, instead of one that's like, well, the solstice coming up, and then you're like, well, what solstice are they talking about? Because this book was published last year. So I just put out volume 2. It's on Amazon.com, but it's also on the other Amazons in the other countries. So if you live in one of those other countries, like Canada, then you got to go on the Canadian Amazon to find. You can find it on Amazon.com, but they won't ship it from the U.S. to another country because they're, I think, trying to cut down on
I like
shipping costs or something.
that way, yeah. I also notice you do a lot of work with like higher conscious relationships and higher conscious parenting. Um, where do you see this role moving forward? What's your role with that?
Well, uh, I mean, I'm always trying to be a better person. I feel like I'm failing like most of the time at being a good person or a better person, and that part of that is my perfectionistic tendencies. Kind of goes right along with being a control freak. But I'm lucky enough to be married to a woman that makes it so easy to love her and be in a relationship with her. So that's great, you know. That this is my third marriage, so I definitely, um, you know, didn't wasn't able to evolve enough in the first two, but somehow got this blessing of my current wife come to me, and then she wanted to have a kid before we even got together. I knew that about her, and I was like, I don't know, but I thought I had dodged that bullet all these years. But I welcomed in Talea. We consciously conceived her. We said, okay, now's when we're going to try, and we got pregnant like right away. And my wife had a home birth, and we wanted that, and we got the name Talea years before we even were trying to conceive. We knew we wanted a girl. We both wanted a girl. So it's like it. Now I have this little bundle of joy that just brings so much love and joy through me. And one of the things I've noticed as a channel is that love really does open us up more. So if you want to channel or if you want to make contact with ETs, then look for love in your life, look for love within you. Go adopt a cat or a dog. I mean, cats have been such a huge force in my life in terms of getting me to feel love. You know, when there was no one else in my life, there was my cat, Kaliandra, who's probably on the floor right now, somewhere in this office. And Mrs. Williams, my other cat before her. So, I mean, opening ourselves up to love is probably the best thing that we could ever do. And it does make you want to be a better person, like Jack Nicholson said in that movie. Um, it really does make you just want to be patient and be allowing of who the person is, and um, you know, deal with your own shit, you know, because you're a better person if you deal with your own shit. If you don't, then the people in your life are going to take the brunt of that, and you don't want that. So I think, you know, having people around to love and to connect with and associate with in all the ways that we want to is ultimately a huge part of everyone's spirituality.
Now, do you have any upcoming projects that you'd like to speak about? Any events that are upcoming?
Well, I mean, I didn't plan it this way, but uh, in terms of like coming up after this podcast, but in 2 weeks, I will be doing a course, a 4-week course called Turn Your Spiritual Gifts into a Business. So it's something I've taught a few times. I'm 9.5 years into doing this for a living, and I've been able to achieve a certain amount of success with it, you know, to the point where I have a house, you know, I'm not renting, I'm living in a house on Maui, and, you know, our family eats all organic. So everything's expensive, and so I've been able to make it work. Um, the having uh, this being able to do this work and still being able to make enough money to live a good life. And even when I was in the business I was in before this, which was just, I was like a guy who just went around and bought up stuff in thrift stores and mom and pop video stores and record stores and sold it on Amazon and eBay. Even when I was doing that, I wanted to see other people succeed at that. So when people would come up to me and say, "What are you doing?" I would tell them, and they'd say, "Oh, I want to do that too." And I would tell them how to do it. And I feel like I just have that innate desire to want to help people do better. And so I put together this course several years ago, and so it's like 4 hours in length, but we don't do 4 hours in a row. We do an hour a week over 4 weeks. And yeah, that's on my website right now under the events menu tab. If you're interested in, I think now is a time when maybe people have more free time and they're thinking about like, well, do I really want to go back to my job? And um, what I see out there is I see a lot of opportunity for people to start their own businesses and to do this full time. And it does take a certain amount of effort and dedication to it, but if you stick to it, it can definitely work for you, and you can be a channel, a healer, a coach, whatever you want to be.
So who exactly would you say this course is designed for or calls out to? Who
People,
that would listen to this and come forward? Like, is it for beginners? Is it for experts that are trying to put things kind of together into the right uh, format?
well, there are certainly people out there who have spent tens of thousands of dollars hiring uh, business coaches and still haven't seen the results because the business coach is just regurgitating what they learned. And I'm teaching from a standpoint of I did this myself. Like I had some help early on in helping me to realize the things I had to do and things I had to learn. But I learned by doing, not by taking someone else. I never took someone else's course.
Hmm.
And I had my best month ever last month, and this month is off to a great start too. So like I've succeeded in not following what I see other people teaching and doing out there, and it's all very similar to the point where people say things like your prices, they have to end in 7, has to be like 197, has to be 97, like stuff like that people think that's something worth passing on to teach, but whereas I'm teaching the practicalities of what you have to do. And so even if you're that person who's already frustrated because you've been at it for a while and haven't been able to make that leap, or you're a person who is just discovering you have spiritual gifts and you're like, maybe I could do this for a living, and those people obviously could use some help. Like I actually did get some help, but I never took a course. But I had one of my ex-wives helped me realize the things I needed to do. And then my gift is in being able to stick with something and be really disciplined about it. So, like I said, putting out a daily message now for 8 years in a row um, does get people's attention.
Are there any closing notes you would like to leave our audience for this Awakened New Earth podcast, Daniel?
The new Earth is coming for sure. You're on track. You're awake, or you wouldn't be watching this. You wouldn't have survived me babbling on and on for all this time if you weren't awake. And that means that you're in a unique position to be one of those awakened people who realizes that you are the creator of the new earth, and you're there to be a part of something really big and really special. And you should really value yourself and everything that you bring to humanity and to the creation of this new earth for us all to inhabit together in harmony and peace and in joy.
And so how does everyone get a hold of you?
I have a website, danielscranton.com. Daniel is spelled like the book in the Bible, and Scranton is spelled like the city in Pennsylvania. So yeah, I'm putting out new content every day there, and I channel it on YouTube, put it out on YouTube every night. My YouTube channel is youtube.com/Dan Scranton. There's a lot of people out there who take my work and they smush it down into like a 3-minute video with robotic voice. So you could do a search for Daniel Scranton on YouTube and not get my channel because so many people are taking my work. It's fine. I'm not complaining. I'm happy they're sharing it, but I'm just letting you know that if you want to get to my channel, it's /Dan Scranton on YouTube.
I want to thank you for coming on the Awaken New Earth podcast. It's always a pleasure to connect with you and just appreciate everything that you're doing for all of our family and your role that you play and really anchoring in some of the higher frequencies here for the collective and all of the known work you do and the unknown work you do. And look forward to seeing what is coming in the future from you as well. So thank you for taking the time out for this podcast today, Daniel.
Thank you, Richard. My pleasure. I appreciate you.
Namaste, brother.
Namaste.
Thank you for tuning in to episode 3 of the Awaken New Earth podcast with Daniel Scranton as our featured guest today. I hope you enjoyed some of his wonderful insight and some of his information and knowledge from working with the Arcturian 9D Council. My name is Richard Melchizedek from StarseedChangingTheWorld.com, and you can find this video of the Awaken New Earth podcast on SoundCloud at Awaken New Earth podcast or on Starseed Changing the World YouTube channel. Just to sign off with all of you, a little bit of light language for closing. Kyo kura kisio yo atatakamara kiyo yoko atatakara kai kai kai. Kishio yo kura kura kuma katatataki ko ko ko. Sending you so much love and gratitude on your journey to the Awaken New Earth. Aho, namaste, and blessed be.